We are two best friends talking about life inside and outside of the gym as women, daughters, sisters, aunties, coaches, and friends.
We will tackle topics ranging from the nervous system, divorce, body image, and dating in your 40s.
We also like to nerd out on the inner workings of the heart, mind, and body. All content, opinions, and ideas are taken from our 47 years of combined coaching experience and is not medical advice.
We don't apologize for being strong or believing we can change the world. We don't take ourselves too seriously around here, and we invite you to do the same. We are here. We are ready.
Welcome to the Dear Life I'm In podcast. I am Lou Crenshaw.
And I'm Chantel Dayton. And here we are again having conversations around the body, around the human, around the heart and the mind, and what makes us tick, what makes us turn on, what makes us turn off. All the things that are life.
And we're going to go back to the beginning today. So we're going to go back to the start of the start of the start. And we are going to go back to the very foundational things that we started with. And that have been the foundation, they've been the pillars of everything that we've done. Maybe the language has changed a little bit, but even in the last maybe month or so, we've really come back even with the language to what we did at the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even acknowledging the things that we believed back then were foundational, and they're still foundational.
Yes.
You know, they didn't leave just because things look different now and just our programs, and they were really what we built what we have now on.
Yes.
When you really look at the big picture, which is very cool to now come back to those things. Not like we forgot about them, but they just weren't in the everyday language that we were using when you are talking about movement so much inside of a gym. But when we did Camp 17, this was the blood.
Well, and I think it's because we had these very specific teachings. We had a very specific process to what we were doing. And so week 1 was this, week 2 was this, week 3 was this. And that's what we did. And as we evolved, the language, maybe the time frames changed. So it wasn't necessarily class number 1 is this, and then class number 2 is this. And so I think it was a few weeks back where we cleaned out the gym, we purged some stuff. We have this upstairs space that's great, but it was filled with so much stuff. It just was like stuff that needed to go to the dump or to Goodwill or the trash, which would also be the dump. And we came across our very first journals that we created for Camp 17 for that 6 weeks. And if you are just joining us and you're like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, I'm not sure what episode is, but we kind of go back to the foundation of the inception and the start of Camp 17 and how that came about. And so the foundation of Camp 17 being based upon friendship and helping women fight for their lives. And we found these old journals and kind of were just looking through them and probably cried a couple tears of just seeing how far we've been and how far we've come and where we started. And then there's the first page when you open it up, it says, welcome to Camp 17. And we started reading it, and literally we were both crying because it is still, as much as we have evolved and as much as what we've done has changed, it's absolutely, our heart is totally the same. So Chantel's going to read, she's going to read out and I'll read the second part, but just kind of what you opened up to on your first day of Camp 17. You got this journal, you got your name tag, you got your t-shirt, and you got your boxing gloves, and you sit down and you're like, I'm not really sure what I signed up for. And then bam, you open this booklet that's beautiful, and you're invited into this journey.
Yeah. And it really is what happened opening it up years later and reading it was, I feel like, this similar response to what we had women tell us when they first saw the first video that was even the promotional video, which was, they said they saw this and they saw the video and then they started crying and then they just put in their credit card information.
Yeah.
And then they were signed up, and they said they didn't really even know what was happening. They didn't know what to expect, but they felt invited into a process that they were excited for. And so a couple weeks ago, opening this up and reading it, I just looked at Lou and I was like, man, I want to go to camp, So you open it up and it greets you with this message. We would like to welcome you into this safe space of self-discovery. We invite you to hope for things you cannot yet see and know you are strong, capable, and so worth the fight. Our desire, your dreams to be unlocked, your potential realized, and for you to know what it feels like to come alive. We want to inspire you to see your story as beautiful. We will walk next to you. We will challenge what you believe to be true about yourself. We will believe in you until you believe in yourself. We will fight for you when it feels like you have no fight left. This journey will not be easy, but will be worth it because you are worth it.
So it's still everything that we do.
It really is. I remember going, by the way, I just went ahead and read both parts, and we said Lou was going to read the other part, but I just went ahead and read it. I remember a while back, long time ago, before you and I started working together and we were friends, and I was just really interested in who you were as a woman and just the authority that you carried in certain areas of your life. And so I went and I listened to you speak at women's events very often, and I just sat in the audience just as your friend, as your best friend, and I was just so inspired by you, and it was really interesting because I would hear you speak and I would think things that it wasn't what you were saying, but it was just like, it was almost the foundation of what you were saying, or almost the application of what you were saying. And I still feel like that happens now when we work together, is you have this way of making complex things very digestible. And even when people are trying to find parts of their body or in movement, and you make things that can seem so complicated. So it's not easy, but it's just so simple. But it's almost like it can't be that simple. It has to be complicated, right? And so I remember going and listening to you speak somewhere and thinking, gosh, what she's saying is that we must be for other people what we want them to be for us. And that's the struggle, is that we're all waiting for people to be what we need. And everybody's just waiting, just sitting around and waiting. And so I remember that, just pondering that, and I'm like, that's what she's saying. But how do we have the courage, or how can we actually do that without expectation? Sometimes it's, well, I'll do this and I'm doing this because I have an expectation that then you will be this for me, or you will provide this for me. And so listening to you speak and that coming forth, I thought, okay, well, we can't even be for other people what we want them to be for us if we don't even know who we are.
Yeah.
If we don't even know who we are, and we don't know, but how do we connect those dots? How do we, and I still believe that is the struggle, because even as humans, we need each other to grow, right? And so if we need each other and we're super needy and we feel needy and we don't want to be needy and we have expectations, but we don't want to have expectations, how do we sift through these things in life and feel normal, but also be able to express what we need, but also be an asset to this world and to other people's lives as well? And so even just like looking at what we're going to talk about to begin with, I feel like that's kind of, what we're going to talk about today. And I feel like it's a good introduction to this, because we often feel like if we want to belong, we have to be like so self-sacrificial or abandon ourselves in order to be chosen or to be kept. And so we do that, and then therein starts the cycle of I don't want to say of like deceiving yourself, but just abandoning yourself sometimes. But there's a healthy way to do it, and we've approached it in a completely different way, which...
Yeah, or denying that we actually have needs. Thinking that, well, if I'm not needy, then I'm a stronger, more independent, self-sufficient person, but I'm ultimately functioning in a self-protective, hypervigilant mode on a regular basis. And so knowing that my ability to realize, to acknowledge, to accept, to share, to allow myself to have needs is really important. And to know that the more that I deny that I have needs that would be fulfilled by other people, the more that I can come home to myself as I acknowledge I actually have needs, and I really do need people. And so when we started...
Which I feel like some people just threw up in their mouth a little bit.
And that's okay.
Because it is like, what? I don't need anybody. If I need people, then that means I might be, betrayed or human, or I might be abandoned, or I might be hurt.
Yeah.
And so they look at that, like you just said, like protecting themselves. And we protect ourselves by denying our needs sometimes, and denying our need for other people.
Yeah.
And because that's just safer.
Yeah.
And we base that on the experience that we've had with other people, where we might have been abandoned, we might have been hurt, we might have been, whether that be intentionally, left, deserted,
Not taken care of.
Yes.
All of those things may have actually been true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we started, so we had this dream of this thing of helping women come alive and fight for their lives. And we had these things that we wanted to talk about, but there were so many things. And then I remember there was one day where there was this question mulling around in my head that seemed like this gigantic question of how could anyone answer this without 1,000 different answers. And the question was, what are the products of necessity for every human soul? And I'm thinking,
That's deep.
I don't know. What are the products of necessity for every human soul? We have those physical needs. We need water, food, air, sleep, and all those things. But the question felt so much deeper, and it needed to be whittled down into something that was digestible, that could fit into 6 weeks, that could be shared and taken and applied to life. And so I remember there was a day that you and we sat down and just trying to dream. We're being creative. So we sat down at a table. We put up this divider in the middle of the table, and
Classic Lou and Chantel.
Like, what are you going to come up with? What am I going to come up with? And where is this all going to intersect together? And I remember we both drew these two pictures that were very profound, and they were each very different. And what came out of these drawings and out of these pictures were the 5 pillars that became the pillars of Camp 17, which are belonging, contribution, empathy, victory, and celebration. And each one of these things felt like such a necessity for every human soul. They all felt so necessary, and they all involved a question that was an internal question of our own introspection, but then also asking this question that involved other people.
Yeah.
And so knowing that being this for myself and then also being this for others, or being vulnerable with other people, or allowing people in, it was this two-sided coin as we looked at these pillars, and from these pillars we built everything that even now we're doing, right? We just did our summit this weekend, and the whole time that we were doing it, the topic was power, passion, and purpose. And I just, the whole time, the entire weekend that we were talking, I'm thinking, we're having our contribution conversation. So many things that we said, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is what we talked about for the last 7 years. It just was interwoven between workouts and breath journeys and ice baths and breath exercises and creativity and writing, and it was woven into the fabric of everything we were doing instead of being just this one topic.
Yeah. Which is again another way to digest it. It really is not just sitting and having a concept, and that's what I feel like was kind of the difference between what we did and what other people were doing that we knew of, was that we had this concept, but it wasn't just a concept. It wasn't just a good idea. It was something that was absorbed as, or even received with the women as, this is a necessity. This isn't just, oh, this is a good idea. This is a necessity.
For your soul.
For your soul. And so often in the gym, we address the body, right? But we don't address the body in the ways that help long term. It's usually, I need to lose weight. I need to get stronger. Yes. I don't want to be these things as I age. So I need to take action now and make a difference now. So then in the long term, or in the long run, I am, quote, healthy, right? But it was just so cool when we started looking at this and saying, like, okay, there's internal, there's external, there's the body, what the body looks like, but the body, even though it looks healthy, it might not be healthy, right? There's much more there. And so when you start, looking at the products of necessity for every human soul, like, that's a really powerful thing, like,
it feels
every
very
human
daunting.
Yes, because it's male or female, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, this is, but obviously we're working with women, and so applying it with them, it was such a powerful program. It was so powerful. And just to really look back and just to know we just saddled up and we were ready to do whatever, but just starting there with the products of necessity for every human soul, it was such a great place to start. I mean, when you really think about it, you're like, is there any other true starting place?
Yeah.
Right?
And then the premise, there's a quote by C.S. Lewis that we put in the journal, because when we were doing what we were doing, it was almost like there were these women coming to us and there was a fire in them that had just been put out. It was still going, right? It's like that campfire in the morning where all it needs is just a little bit of oxygen. It needs a little bit of oxygen and it needs a little bit of wood. And that is what it takes, and a little bit of stoking to get it going. And we were like, this is what we're getting to do for women in their lives. And so there was this quote that we also put, it's on the next page of, it's right before we do their first day freak out, where they would come in and just, we'd talk about, okay, you all are freaking out about something. You're all a little bit nervous about something, whether, whatever it is, whether I'm going to look silly or I'm going to get hurt or I'm not going to know how to do this or somebody's going to know me or, whatever it might be. And so this quote says, if there is a real woman, even the trace of one still there inside the grumbling, it can be brought to life again. If there's one wee spark under all those ashes, we'll blow it till the whole pile is red and clear.
It's just so good. But how often do you think, even just as you were talking about, it's like the campfire in the morning. How often do we just go right to the bottle of, like, what is it kerosene? It's not kerosene. What is it?
Lighter fluid.
Lighter fluid. There we go. Like kerosene. I'm like, I don't know if that's the right word. And we just go right to that because we feel like we don't have time to sit there and blow on these embers. We don't have time to find little dry pieces of wood to do this. We're just going to put the wood that we have right here that's convenient. But there's something so beautiful about when you take the time, when you take your breath and you blow on those embers and you just watch the smoke start to increase, and then you watch the embers get brighter, and then you begin to have hope, right? It's like that. Because sometimes we start with a little bit of hope, and sometimes it's not even hope, it's just wonder. Like, what if I blew on this? What if this is still capable of having a flame? What if? And so you get down, not because like if we're like so hopeful and then there's no hope, we find out at the end. I don't feel like that's this kind of situation. It really is just wondering about yourself, and then the hope kind of comes in, or it comes back to life. And so it's a little bit safer, I feel like, to wonder than it is to have hope, because it's, even though hope is an absolute necessity, I feel like, and because some people just kill the hope and they just have no hope for the life, bringing back their body, bringing back their spirit, bringing back their heart, bringing back their mind, like coming back online. They just lose that. But I mean, if you're listening to this, I just encourage you to just wonder about yourself rather than deciding, that it's concrete, that it's already done. Right?
Well, and so I think the thing too that's very interesting about what you just said about the fire, of just like putting the lighter fluid on it, is that when we do that, you can't take and put a humongous log on the fire right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Right? You just said that, like, you can't do that. You need to go find little sticks. Maybe you get some paper or some newspaper and you do those little things. It works the same way that your metabolism works. If you haven't been eating food on a regular basis and your body's been starving, I don't just take and put you on 2,500 calories and hope that your metabolism is going to start kicking in, right? We need to stoke the fire a little bit, and let's put you around the same calories that you're eating every day, but consistently you start eating that every day for a week. And then maybe we add a little bit more, and we add a little bit more until your body starts to remember what it's like to be fed. And then your metabolism begins, and you were the one that gave this analogy about the fire, of just being able to, that our metabolism functions like that, but that's our life as well. Like, it's a little bit, right? We don't want to come into the gym, all of a sudden put you on a diet, and you're training 5 days a week, and you're, make sure that you drink a gallon of water every single day, and make sure that you're getting 30 grams of fiber every single day.
And you're going to quit
any sugar. Don't drink any alcohol. You should definitely quit smoking right now.
Yeah. So it's that all, not all or nothing, but we just believe that we want everything to complement each other, which is good. We want that. But often when you look at a change of seasons is good, right? It is there is going to be certain things that happen, but we feel like, okay, we have all this gusto to change this, I need to change all the other things. When really you're changing the season to then the next season, what's going to happen the next season, right? The next season, typically, you're not going to be able to maintain all of those changes. It's way too much stress on the system just making all those changes in general, right? And so, because we've had ladies do that, and you want to be excited for them because they want to make these changes, but you also are like, reality is that you have 3 children, you're quitting smoking, you're quitting drinking, you haven't been working out at all and now you're working out 4 days a week and you want to start eating better.
Your poor body is like, whoo,
Yeah.
girl, this is too much stress.
And then you're going to be able to maintain it for a while until you remember that you're also human and life then comes in, right? And then it's like, oh, I can't do this right now. Well, this is your life. So it's like, how do we do that? And so this, I think that our way definitely isn't just throw the big log on the fire and throw gasoline on it, right?
That works.
It totally does.
For a little while.
For a little bit. But then you think about when you really look at that, it burns it up and there's not those foundational embers that are keeping it. You know, it's something external. Like really, like we can get the fire hot enough. We just have to look at our conditions. Like, is it raining? Is the wood wet? Is it right? We have to look at like what we have around us, but then we also have to be educated too, right? It is the wood that's around us, the things, the sources that we're pulling from, right? We're not always going down to the minute market and buying this nicely cut dry wood and then this pile of kindling, and then we go to our campsite. It is like you and I, we just went camping recently and we drove down the road. Actually, I don't know if this is legal or not, so maybe we drove down the road and there were trees that had been knocked down. There were things that were dead. There were things that were still like, you know, alive that we tried to burn that didn't burn. There were things that smoked and we were like, well, we can't burn that wood anymore. Like that was too much. Or we'd put wood on there and it would burn so quickly. And then we found this one that kind of burned a little bit longer, and that was
But
better.
it needed a foundation.
It
to do
needed that.
It
Yeah.
needed a lot of smaller pieces. And
Yeah.
I think that's such an important part of the journey is realizing that the little things hold the big things together. That we don't have to go. I mean, when you come into our gym, we do not put you on a nutritional plan. We don't even talk to you about nutrition. We talk to our ladies about nutrition when our ladies come to us and are ready to talk about nutrition. Because if you're not ready, you're not ready, and it doesn't matter. It just does not matter.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you think you know until you realize that you don't know. And we think that we know, we want to do all the things, but in all reality, it's they come here and they sometimes just want us to tell them what to do. And which some people in life, it's hard, you know? It's like, I have a lot to worry about. I want to just tell me what to do, please. But building the relationship where then you are more connected to yourself through movement and through breath. And then we talk about food, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're ready, because if you're not ready to make those sacrifices, and you're not ready to participate in the discipline of this. Like it's just not a reality. And so for some people, even just coming into the gym and just moving a couple days a week, just keep eating like you're eating. But the thing that automatically happens is that as you start moving a little bit more, you might want to change your food a little bit more. Or as you start changing your food, you might want to start moving. For the first time in my life, like really, I'm very much paying attention to my food in this season. I got a little chubby and I didn't feel very good in my own skin. And so I was like, you know what would happen if I just became really disciplined with my food? Because I never have been. I've never felt like I needed to. I've never wanted to. And so I just didn't. And I also don't really have any shame around food. So I just...
Bless you.
Yeah. I didn't sneeze. And I know that's not everybody's story. But for me, it wasn't. But what started to happen was as I started eating better, my body started naturally wanting to move a little bit more. I've just really been in a season, probably the last 2 or 3 years, of just really struggling to take care of myself. I'm not taking care of myself, taking care of my body. I've been very much in a season of taking care of my heart and growing and learning and becoming more tender and realizing that I need a little bit more self-compassion. And so the journey has been very much a journey of my heart and connecting my heart to my mind and my heart to my body. But I think I struggled for a really long time of how do I have a tender heart and like do hard things in the gym? And I just really struggled to find the intersection. It just felt like there couldn't be one or the other. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I am feeling very chubby. I'm not moving. I actually feel kind of crappy. I don't even remember if I can do hard things anymore. I know I probably can, but I'm not doing hard things with my body. And that not doing the hard things with my body, I was then just kind of eating whatever, and my heart being the primary goal, and walking with people and what we were doing in the gym and all of that. And so I just sort of put my body just kind of went on the back burner. And so recently I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch my food and just see what happens. And as I've been watching my food, I've been moving a little bit more. And not massively, not hours at a time, just going, okay, I have 12 minutes right now. I've coached for 10 hours today, and I've got 12 minutes until the next class starts. I'm just going to do some intervals on the ski, and I'm just going to move and sweat just a little bit. Right? But sometimes it feels like if it's not, the entire thing, I should do nothing instead of, okay, I've got 10 minutes. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go walk around.
Yeah.
Or, okay, I'm going to do 20 burpees right now because I've got a little bit of time, And so for me, that really, that was really helpful. And so we were talking about this. We've been writing notes back and forth to each other on the table. But we were going to make this episode 5 parts. And then I just wrote Chantel a note and I was like, hey, should we just make this a long form podcast? And so this baby's going to be long. So you may have a lot of trips back and forth to work, but people do love the long form. And somebody asked us, like, can't you make your podcast a little bit longer? And so we're actually going to take what we were going to do in these pillars and we were going to stretch them out for 5 podcasts. We're just going to make it 1.
Yeah. Let's just do it.
So let's just do it.
Yeah. Might as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's great because then you just get all the pieces and all the parts. And so what is the very first stake? And guys, so if you look in the dictionary at all of these words, you're probably not going to find these definitions because these are actually, when we started talking about these words and what they really meant, Chantel and I just kind of wrestled back and forth between, okay, this is the definition in the dictionary, but also what do we think this is and how do we see this in life? And so as we give these like definitions and what we're saying is really just what we believe them to be, and then asking the question that is more introspective, and then the question that is more with the people that love you. And we would really challenge you as you listen to this podcast, really taking some time to ask yourself these questions and to answer them. And I'm sure along the way that we'll have maybe just a couple of ideas of things that you can do to implement some of these in your life. Just some little, hey, you should try this. Why don't you grab your phone and and just really start to engage this a little bit more in your life. And again, none of these pillars are anything that we invented, but a lot of them are, conversations that we've heard in the world. But this is also a conversation that we started I feel like some words are so just talked about all the time now, but you kind of look back and we're talking about them a little bit before it felt like it was an everyday conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like buzzwords or, when the word is laid by somebody who's well known and
way more followers
has
than us.
Letters after their name. And, you're
Speaking
like,
of followers, if you wouldn't mind sharing that you listen to this, subscribing to our podcast, leaving a review, that would be rad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless you have something
share.
negative to say, then keep it to yourself. I always say that. I'm like,
You do always say that.
Even though we do, constructive criticism is fantastic. And so we
So
do
you
love
were
that.
really just joking.
Yes,
Okay.
only partially.
Only.
No, I'm just kidding.
So what was the first stake that we came up with?
So
for
the first
Camp 17?
stake in Camp 17. Now we say pillars.
pillar.
We did call them stakes because we really did want to have the play on words with what we were doing with Camp 17. And so camping, pre-season training grounds for season is like kind of what we were going for. And so we thought, okay, well, a camp, and you're camping, and so the stakes in your tent, like if you have one out, it kind of leaves one side saggy. And so it was this picture that we had of, this is kind of funny, but you're coming with like a saggy tent, and for some of you have one stake that you are like, yes, I implement this is good. But we slowly have moved away from that analogy because it was cute for a time, and now more so we consider them pillars because they are extremely important. And so our first one was belonging, and it was something that was, I feel like it was talked about, in like the self-help community, and something that was acknowledged. But I feel like we brought definitely a powerful stance to it. And so when we both went in separate rooms, and with all of these pillars, I wrote down my definition and Lou wrote down hers, and then we came together and we collaborated, and this is what we came up with. So
We might have argued a little bit too.
yes, we did.
Like, no, I don't agree with you on that.
It's like, you don't have to agree.
We probably didn't say that. It was probably like, no, you need to agree.
Yes. So belonging is the security in relationship where love and acceptance exists regardless. And so belonging, you once said this, we are more afraid of not belonging than we are of dying.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was not mine.
No,
sure
you
I
had
heard
said
it somewhere else. I'm
Yeah.
not sure who said it.
So when you think about that, you're like, no way, I'm totally afraid of dying. Like, I'm afraid of dying. You kidding me? Like, belonging, like, whatever. And then you really think about it. Like, what if you felt like you didn't belong?
Yeah.
And what if you felt like you didn't belong, or you didn't even know who you were because you've left parts of yourself out of relationships that you were in because you feel like they would conflict with you being kept around.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, you're like, no, I would stand up for who I am, and I would do this. Well, yeah, because you probably have a few people that you belong with. And so you aren't afraid of not being chosen by these people because you've been chosen by 1, 2, 3, or these other, the people that are in your corner.
And by belonging, we're not talking about fitting in.
No.
We're not talking about you abandoning your heart, changing the way you look, making sure you lose enough weight, dressing a certain way, driving a certain car, living in a certain house, and creating an image that then you feel like you fit in with this group of people that you fit in with. But that doesn't feel like security. And this definition is the security in relationship where love and acceptance exists regardless of your car, regardless of your house, regardless of your finances, regardless of who you are or what you're going through. But it really is that place where we look at our lives and we can ask the question of, who do we choose and love? And then who chooses and loves us? And so those are those two questions of, who do you choose? Who do you love? Who do you love and choose in relationship where love and acceptance exist regardless? Like, who are those people that you love and accept regardless?
Interesting enough is we actually do a version of this in our 2-day workshop in Shift. And I talk about belonging and authenticity, or authenticity and attachment, which belonging is included in that. And I actually ask the ladies these questions still, and then I have them write on a piece of paper what or who. The first question I ask them is, who do you choose? Who do you love?
Yeah, maybe pause this podcast right now
Yeah.
and write down who you love and choose and who you love and accept without any sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Reservation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless. You
Yeah.
love and accept this person, these people, regardless of their behavior.
Yes. And so we have them do that, right? And so they write this list, and typically I see some women like their pens are on fire and they are writing name after name after name after name after name after name after name. And there's 10 names on there, 15 names on there. And then later on, we talk a little bit more. And then I ask them who put themselves on that list.
In the who do you choose?
No, who do you who do you choose? Who put themselves on that list? And maybe you would have one person, and that person put it on there because they've been to our workshop before.
Yep.
And they think, they're like, whoa. And then some of them are like, oh man, I saw that one coming, or gosh, that's so true. And so I said, okay, so you're putting these people before yourself, but then really, then I preface like, okay, I'm going to invite you to put your name on that list, not because you should or because you have to, but inviting you in this moment right now to make the decision and the commitment to choosing and loving yourself. But let's go back to the definition and what the definition actually is and how powerful. And most women will sit there and they will hesitate. They'll hesitate because security in relationship where love and acceptance exists regardless. So do you love and accept yourself if you're fat? Do you love and accept yourself if you've lied or you've cheated? Or you have abandoned someone, or something happened from your hand that affected other people? Like you disappointed yourself in some way. Do you still, regardless is that word?
Yeah.
And they all just kind of sit and okay, but yet this list right here, you're going to tell me that you're going to provide that for all those other people, but you're questioning whether or not you provide it for yourself.
Yeah. And the security in relationship of, as we've seen for so long, since we've moved into a lot of nervous system regulation and breath and all things vagus nerve and the regulation of the body of women not even feeling safe inside of their own bodies. And so knowing the dysregulation that can happen with that, which we can talk about a little bit as we continue in this conversation. But then we move into that question of who chooses and loves you.
Yeah. And most of the time the list will look somewhat similar, but the two lists look similar. And yet some women are so sure of the people that they choose, but yet they aren't sure if they choose them back, if those people choose them back.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter, because you can choose people that don't choose you back.
Yeah.
You can. And you have the freedom to do that. And so, but often we will choose people because we want them to choose us back. And even if they don't, then we try to do different things so that they will choose us back. And then we go back to belonging, and we're trying to belong with someone. We're trying to have this relationship that is reciprocal, right? Is that the right word?
Reciprocated.
Reciprocated. Yeah.
Reciprocal.
Reciprocal. Yeah. And so we have this, we're trying to build this relationship where this is happening. And so we then end up weighing, what are the things about myself that might be too much for this person, or the reason why they're not choosing me back? And so what things can I abandon within myself so that they do choose me back?
Yeah.
But then they're choosing a lie.
Yeah.
Right? They're choosing a lie, and it's not that they're intentionally choosing a lie, knowing that it's a lie. Like, that's very deceptive, right? It's deceptive and there's a responsibility. And even in what you've said, this is like people pleasing is actually manipulation, because you're not actually giving them a true, honest source of what your opinion is, of who you are, of what you want, what you believe, and what you stand on. And so often we'll keep those things hidden. And it's not saying that you have to reveal everything to everyone, but it is like those people that are intimate in your circle, that's where we need, like, if we don't have those 2 or 3 or 4 relationships where we are allowing ourselves to be known and being chosen for fully who we are, even with all of our messy stuff. But I don't know about you, but it's a pretty incredible place to really be when you know that you can be fully who you are and be chosen by somebody else.
Yeah.
Like fully. And I'm sure parents feel that way about their children.
Yeah.
You know, and where
sometimes. But sometimes you've got children that are going to abandon their hearts, and they're going to leave parts of themselves behind because it affects their attachment to their parents, because it's too much, or it's not enough, or you know, they're just too much for their parents.
Yeah.
You know, in those moments.
Yeah. Or even like parents are choosing their children, and the children aren't necessarily choosing the parents. You know, like they are in the sense that is like, who do you choose / love? Yes. But like, is like when a child loves their mom or dad, is it conditional? If my dad does this, then am I going to be like, I'm going to peace out, or the other way around? So we can look at both sides of this, right? But like so often when the ladies write down all of their things, they write down every single person in their family, you know, their kids and their mom or their dad or whoever. And then when they write down on the other, who chooses you, sometimes their kids don't show up on that line because they don't know if their kids choose them or not. Right. And so that's kind of the cool part also that we do, is that then we invite them to tell someone in their circle that they do, now with the definition in front of them. Just send somebody a text message and say, hey, you know, I choose you. Yeah. I love you is something that we throw around all the time. But when you really say like, I choose you,
people might text you back and ask you if you're sick or dying, or
yeah,
everything's okay,
yeah,
or if there's an emergency, or
yeah,
or what has happened, because that part can get really challenging when we, you know, when we are, because what you're doing is you're just opening a door of vulnerability to somebody not responding. I mean, we've had women who nobody responded, or it felt like too much, but I think the thing that's really important for us to understand is the safer that we become in our own bodies, the safer that we can begin to feel in relationship, and you know, our ability to manage our nervous system and to create regulation inside of our bodies is so important. You know, your sleep is important. Your ability to eat food on a regular basis is important. Your ability to not, you know, house every single emotion that feels too scary to feel. And, you know, our ability to engage honestly with the people around us. Those sorts of things they're so important. And so for some of us, you know, I often talk about how this subject of belonging can feel really challenging, of like some people thinking maybe they just are really bad at making friends, but they may just have a nervous system that's deeply dysregulated for a lot of different reasons. And so the more that we can begin to regulate and be inside of our bodies, the safer that we can feel in a world that may not feel safe. And the more that we regulate, the more that we can start to see people that we can regulate with and realize, whoa, these are people that I'm completely dysregulating with, right? It's our nervous systems, they co-regulate with people. So sometimes trouble finds trouble and function finds function. Or sometimes dysfunction tries to find function, but they sort of run into each other and it doesn't work. So this conversation is really, really, really big. But when we get into the heart of the matter, we all need to have a place where we belong. We need to have people that we belong to, that we belong with. We need people that we can be a burden to, and they can be a burden to us, because that really is relationally, right? I need to be able to be a burden to you at times as your best friend, because that's important for me to know that, oh my gosh, I could burden you with my tears or with my stress or with my troubles today, and I am willing to be burdened by you. Mm-hmm. But so often we don't want to be a burden, or we've been a burden, or we've been told that we're a burden. And so we try to do everything that we possibly can to unburden everyone. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of that, we're feeling extremely isolated and like nobody really knows us.
Mm-hmm. And then we try to even take on the burden, so many burdens, and that was the other thing with even acknowledging the capacity that you have in when you make this list. And you have 15 people and you're like, can you actually provide that at that level for that many people? No. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you don't have time for people. It doesn't mean that you don't, it doesn't mean that you don't have that connection. It doesn't mean that you aren't friends with those people. I can name a lot of women that I am friends with, but that I don't provide this level of belonging to, like that depth. There are very few humans in my life where I provide that for, but man, I tell you, I will die for it. Like I will die for them.
But we have to realize that we don't have the capacity to be that for everybody.
Yes. And so I look at, and we know bodies, and I'm sitting there, and the ladies who have 15 people on their list, I know their personality and I know their body. I see them move and I'm like, you are overly stressed. You are extremely anxious and you don't know how to connect to yourself. Because if you were connected to yourself, you would realize that this is outside of your capacity, right? And it is like it's like the sickness of women sometimes, is that we just feel we want to be these things for everyone around us, but we don't know how. It's like that all in or all out, right? Where the list can move from 15 to 7. And it doesn't mean that the ones that you took off the list are, now just out on the street. No, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a lot to consider, and we do talk about it in our 2 days, and we do look at just how to be your authentic self. And when you are your authentic self, then you're able to look at this and provide belonging, or not necessarily provide belonging, but you're able to offer this in relationship, this level of depth from a place where you still can be authentic to who you are. Right.
Because you've accepted yourself. You are becoming safe inside of your own body. You are no longer abandoning your heart around every corner, because it's just easier to do that.
Yeah. And the hard part is as you get older and you realize these patterns, and you begin to realize, gosh, I don't even really know who I am.
Yeah. We have a lot of women it's part of the reason I wanted to go deeper with people. I had a gym all those years ago and I loved what I was doing, but I wanted to go deeper because it was almost, obviously women didn't do this, but you ask them their name and it's like so-and-so's wife and so-and-so's mom. Mm-hmm. And then you ask her what she loves and she has no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. And even just culturally, I have some clients that I work with in the morning, and Tess, the gal who works with us, she just had a baby. She's absolutely gorgeous, Lila James. And when she came up the other day and she was holding Lila, one of my clients said, "Oh, it's Lila's mom." And then she kind of just like got big eyes, and then Tess is like, I know, and she's like, it feels like that is like, it wasn't a warning, but it was like, that is sometimes what happens is as your daughter gets older, then you're just Lila's mom.
And
yeah,
you are not just.
Yeah. And so she's like, and then my client just said, like, remember, like, you are not just Lila's mom. But little girls are Lila's friends. Like, it's Lila's mom. It's Lila's mom. Where all of a sudden you disappear. And then, but Tess is doing a really great job of, I mean, a lot of different things, but even just acknowledging that, where it's like, whoa, yeah, like that's a possibility where people don't even know my name. They just know me as Lila's mom. Like, yeah. So losing yourself in that. But anyway, I think that the pillar of belonging is a huge one, and some people just get stuck there, and they didn't in camp. They're like, I can't even get past that one, because it's just so powerful.
Such a bigger conversation. I mean, we could get so much deeper, but you could go back and listen to the Vegas Nerve podcast. I'm not sure what episode that is, but you could go back and listen to that and hear how belonging affects your nervous system, and how your nervous system can affect belonging and your health and your immunity and all of that.
Lots of goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Why not?
What's our next pillar, Lou?
Our next pillar is the pillar of contribution. And this
Does this mean money? Is this how much money we give?
Yeah. This is playing the significant and purposeful lead role in the story of your life. So, Chantel, if you are not playing the lead role in the story of your life in this world, who is?
No one.
Correct.
No one. And that is kind of crazy when you really think about it. And I think that is where the word significant is important to include in this definition, because it's significant in the sense that if you don't play it, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden somebody else will fill the job. There is a spot for you. There is a place for you.
Did you just hear that, everybody?
Yeah. And part of one of the struggles of life is finding out what that looks like in action. Like, what are you doing in the world to contribute, not so that you get something, but because it's actually what you were made for. Yeah. It's what you were designed for. Every one of us has a unique skill set. And the hardest part about discovering this is that we don't get to look at a model that's external, right? I don't get to look at you,
but you could,
as a guide to try to figure out who I am, right? I can't look at you and say, I mean, I can say, you know, Lou's doing this. She's really good at this. I want to be good at this too. I want to do this. I want to do that. But even then, I can be good at those things. But what unique skill set do I have? What do I bring to the world that looks like me? And so often we feel like if it isn't at the front of the classroom, if it doesn't hold a title in some capacity, whether it be like in government, or if you're not
an influencer.
Oh boy.
There was no influencers when we created all of this, though.
No, there wasn't.
No.
Yeah.
But you have a couple really great analogies when it comes
thank you.
This. And you've got one about a party, and then you've got one about some flip-flops and eyes. So first of all, these questions that we're asking in contribution is, why are you alive? And then the other part of the question is, are you living? And so I would challenge you to answer those questions. Why are you alive? I will tell you that you are not alive to die every day sitting at a desk at a job that you hate, so that you can have retirement that in 30 years you get to use in order to start living your life.
Yeah, but Lou, I got bills to pay.
Well, that's another part of this, right? We get into this conversation. I mean, do you want me to get into this right now?
Yeah, well, Lou, let me just preface this, okay? Because this is going to be a road that we go down that I feel like is a wrestle, because you and I are both single and we don't have any children. And so it's seen as it's really easy for us to say things like this because we don't have the responsibilities that other women do have. And we will wrestle all day long. Like, we really will. It's not like, oh, yep, you got me there. You're right. Yeah, we're definitely aware of that. And we are aware that our calling looks more burdensome than most. And it doesn't look the same. However, it very well could. Yeah, I'm like, do we want to go down this road? Do we want to hold hands down this road? Or do we want to, what does this look like? Does this look like a bulldozer today? Are we forging a new road?
I am in Luteal. I could bring a lot of bulldozing to
I'm in Luteal too, so I'm ready to rumble. But, and you can reference one of our other podcasts on the Flow Effect to
If you're like,
know really
what are you talking about?
Luteal? What is Luteal?
So here's the thing. As you just said it, I will quickly hold your hand and bulldoze this part of this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we all have bills to pay. That is a part of life, right? But are we thriving in our life, or are we just enduring our life? Like, are we actually living, or are we surviving? Right? And that's just a whole other nervous system conversation as well, because it's really hard to enjoy life truly when you are in survival mode. And survival mode is exactly what that sounds like, right? Oh my gosh, I feel like I have so many things that I want to say, and I'm just not going to. Should probably just have another podcast. But ultimately, when people say, well, you know, I have bills to pay. Yes, we all do, right? And we've had so many women who are at jobs that they hate, living in places that they hate. Like, I've always wanted to move here, or our family's always wanted to go here, or, you know, I've always wanted to do this as a career. And you're like, well, why don't you just do it? But there's a lot of risk involved, right? We might have to change our lifestyle. Well, I have a big mortgage. Okay, well, maybe you sell your house and you move into an apartment for a little while and you start to save some money. Or, well, but I have a car payment and I have a mortgage. Okay, well, why don't you sell your car and drive something that's maybe a little jankier so you don't have a car payment? Right? Like, we can make choices. Maybe don't bring I was going to say.
I was going to actually just say, like, don't bring wisdom to my excuses. Like, don't apply wisdom. Don't apply common sense to my excuses. Like, don't do that,
folks. Bulldozer.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's like, you're bringing too much sense to the reasons why I can't do what you're asking me to do.
And the reasons that you're saying that you can't do it is because ultimately you're scared to do it.
Yes.
You're afraid to do it, and so it's much easier to make the excuse and the reason for that. But only you know how miserable you are in your life. You know how miserable you are. And you're probably, a lot of times there's a song that, like, in one of the lines, it's about just being comfortably miserable. And there's a lot of really comfortably miserable humans out there.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have the house and I have the car and I have the boat and I've got all the stuff, but it's not actually doing anything for me, because ultimately I'm not doing anything in life that feels like it has purpose. You know, Jordan Peterson said something the other day about men who play video games, and he's like, you're out here slaying dragons in this, you know, virtual world.
Yeah.
And he's like, but the problem is that you are not slaying any sort of dragons. He used some very big words like narrative trope. And I was like, what does that even
You're like,
mean?
hold on.
He's
Hold on,
like,
let me-
this isn't a blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm not being literal, but this is a narrative trope. And I'm like, okay, he's probably.
You're like, yeah, that's what
the
I thought it was
story-
too.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what a trope is. But ultimately, what he's saying is you are sitting around playing video games because you are not slaying dragons in your life. Because if you were slaying dragons, you would be living with great purpose and a burden. And so he was saying, you don't have a big enough burden to carry in this world, so you're slaying dragons on a video game. Now, playing video games every once in a while, like that's fine. But there's this world of like killing, like army men shooting and playing these games that we're in this world of conquering. But what are we conquering in the real world? Like, I did not conquer anything today. I was totally not challenged because I'm at a job that I've been at for 25 years and it's really easy. I learned nothing, but it's comfortable and it's safe.
Yes.
And I don't want to make any sacrifices to make any changes. I remember when I opened my very first gym, I was 24 years old, and I am not joking you. I was right next door to La Burrita.
La Burrita. The
And
burrita. Comida.
I did not have a lot of money, and I was like pouring what money I did have. I was building a business, so I didn't have a lot of money. And I freaking ate peanut butter and jelly way too often because it was cheap. And I would go to La Burrita, and at the time, this was 20 years ago, I could get a burrito, like just a bean and cheese burrito for $2.50 or something. And so I would eat bean burritos and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And it wasn't a season forever, thank goodness. But ultimately there was sacrifices to be made in order to build something. But a lot of times we don't want the sacrifice. We don't want to be uncomfortable. But the word that you said earlier, the significant, you said playing the significant and purposeful lead role in the story of your life. And so for some of you, you have to ask yourself the question, do I feel like I'm being purposeful in my life? Or do I just feel like I'm going through the motions day in and day out, struggling to feel like I'm doing anything in this world? Because like you had said, which you might just say, but you're significant. You're significant whether you like it or not.
Yeah. I remember, I've definitely had like a journey of belief in my life and what it is that I believe, and challenging it, but yet also learning to ask questions and learning to just step into the fear of asking questions and being an adult and not knowing the answer, but instead of pretending like I do know, having the courage to ask a simple question or a basic question and foundational. And one of those was, wow, there are people in the world that don't believe that they're significant. And I was like, damn it, like they're significant whether they believe it or not.
Or whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And you look at even in culture today, it's like we just decide that something is, even though there's clear indicators that it's something else, and we then believe like, oh, well, we can just change what it is. Well, with some things, you absolutely cannot do that. Like, you can't. It's ridiculousness to think that you can. And so I remember kind of having this passion. And at this point, when we were actually doing Camp 17, we were inside of CrossFit The Den, and there was a CrossFit class happening on the other side of the rig, which was the big side of the floor. And it was the evening class that had grown in Camp 17. And I think there was like 25 or 30 women. And I remember us doing like a kicking and punching thing. And I remember like having them all around. and like having to call them in really close. And I actually remember,
You should see the fierceness in her eyes.
yes, and my hands, they're up. They're off the desk, ladies and gentlemen. And I remember looking up at these faces, and these women were they were in, right? We were just kicking and punching. They were just like, they were feeling their bodies. They were expressing, and they were just lit up. And I remember calling them in, and I remember saying like, you are significant whether you believe it or not. And then tears just down faces. And other women were just lit like little bulldogs, and they were ready. They just needed to be let loose. And then we went back, and just attaching, or just even thinking like, what if I actually start believing that I'm significant? You know? And then the realization of, I am actually going to live out what I believe. Like, my life is going to be a byproduct of what I believe. And so I believe these things, and then I can see it. But so often we have the mentality of, I don't believe it until I can see it, right? Because we don't want to be proven to be wrong. We don't want to be proven to be stupid or be said to be an idiot because we are believing something that isn't true, right? And so and then often what we do is then we do like this confirmation bias, right? Where we're looking for everything to prove these things to be true. And we do that with negative things often with our person. I'm insignificant. And because I'm believing that, then I look at all the things that are actually pointing to that being correct.
And some of us never learned that we were significant.
No.
Nobody ever told us.
No.
And so for some of you that are like really struggling with this statement, just maybe nobody told you.
Yeah.
So just come in here, hang out with us for a little bit. We'll remind you until you can remember that for yourself. Get around people that will remind you of that, or go find people. But for some of you, this statement feels like you can't believe it because nobody told you and no one taught you that. So there's a place of compassion that has to come into play here, because nobody taught you to live that way.
And yeah. And you look at contribution, and the fear is that I really don't have anything to give. I don't have anything to give. And we try to find things to give. And I feel like you know that you found it because you're giving without there being, or you're contributing without there being an expectation of something in return. It's just what you're here for. Like, that is what you're here for. And I think that there's a confusing part of this, because we feel like if we find what we're really supposed to be doing and what our quote calling is, then it's going to be easy. And it is far from easy. And an important part that you had just described with the bean burritos and the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which I happen to love those two things very much. You look at the sacrifice that you made, and we need to make that sacrifice, because then we will take care of what it is that we are growing, that we have been given. And it's like, you and I, when we first became friends, I had never met somebody who had bought so many pairs of sunglasses in a short period of time. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, she's buying so many, like, and you're like, they're cheap. And I just,
I lose them. I sit on them.
Yeah, I sit on them often, or I'll lose them, or I'll leave them somewhere. And I was like, if you paid $200 for those, you would not be sitting on them. You would not be losing them, and you would have a place for them. And this is what, like, in my head. But I'm also one that will buy the most expensive of things. I probably need to work on that a little bit, because I don't need to buy as many things top dollar. But a lot of I do have the same things for long periods of time because I take care of them, because I steward them. And part of that is the investment initially influences the level at which I take care of things. And I realized
$10 sunglasses are different than $250 sunglasses.
100%. You're like, I'm just going to buy another pair. And which makes sense, right? And then there's much more to that can be of, we don't have to talk about that now, but even in contribution, like moving and doing the things, people that have listened to our previous podcasts, there are stories of the sacrifice that we have made to get to where we are today. And we don't make that sacrifice because we're promised this beautiful gym with a chandelier in the bathroom and right, and a rig that is on its way.
Oh my gosh, we have a white Rogue rig on its way.
If a rig
24 feet long.
If there were ever a sexy rig,
we just bought
one.
Yep.
And we continue to invest and we continue to grow and we continue to sacrifice rather than just take everything that we can away from what is happening. It's just always like we just keep, yes, we eat the fruit, we share the fruit, and then we're always putting back into what we have, and it's great. However, we didn't make these sacrifices years ago because there was a promise that looked like this. It was the product of just living out our purpose, living out our calling. And it was a really, really bumpy road. And however, I feel like that was very much so needed, because not only did, when we made those investments, we trusted, or those risks, we're trusting ourselves is basically what's happening, is we are trusting ourselves to hold it up, to fight for it, to forge, to bring in the bulldozer, to do the hard things. And so you look at contribution, and when we talk to people, to women about contribution, they're like, well, I'm already doing this. I'm married. I have 3 kids. Like, I can't do anything. And so what do we say to women that are in that season of life? And what do we say to women who do have a mortgage and have 2 cars and who do have, kids to take care of and one in college, and right? So what do you say to, and you say this, and you've said this before, which I absolutely love, just about being a mom and the importance of that. What do you say to women who that's what their life looks like right now, and they feel like they can't contribute in any way? And what do you say to them?
Well, you are contributing right now. You're raising and you're cultivating the life of little humans. Mm-hmm. Like, you're wiping their butt, and you're making sure that they're bathed, and you're teaching them to brush their teeth, and you're teaching them things, and you're reminding them that they're significant, and you're telling them who they are, mm-hmm. and you're teaching them to dream, and you're teaching them to connect with their heart, and you're cultivating the life of future world changers. Mm-hmm. And so in this season, that might be what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But what happens, this is where it can get dangerous, is when we're just trying to get through this season in order, like, I just need this season to end. But the fact of the matter is we're always going to be in a specific season that we're hoping is going to be over. Like, when my kids get out of this grade, and then when they get out of this grade, and then when they move on to high school, and then when they're in college, and then we just live our lives thenning every situation to where we're never actually present and thriving and living in the moments that we're in. Mm-hmm. We are just enduring them, which, when you get into the nervous system, that creates a survival mode in the body. And hormonally and physiologically, what is happening is your body is just in a flight mode of feeling like you are being hunted, and that you are just trying to get through, and you are surviving. Mm-hmm. And so being able to be in the seasons that we're in are really important, mm-hmm. right? We live in valleys and peaks, and we climb mountaintops, and we get to the top of the mountain, and we're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm at the top of the mountain, but we're not going to stay there forever, mm-hmm. right? We go back down into the valley, and that's where we're going to learn and where we're going to grow. That's also where you don't see big tall trees and orchards growing on top of mountaintops. They're growing in the valleys. And so what can we learn in the valleys and the slower seasons where we're not enduring seasons? We are present in the season, and we are honest about the season that we are in. Right? If at the gym every single moment of every single day we're just looking to the next thing, we're going to miss just being here right now.
Yeah.
There's seasons that it's like, okay, it's time for us to move again. Not move locations, but it's time for us to move forward again. Okay, we've established this, and then we're moving forward. But we can't do that all the time. Like, we have to go down into the valley. We have to learn. We have to grow. We got to get pruned, and but we still have to learn to be in that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And learn who we are there, so that then when we come out of those seasons, nobody can tell us any different. That no, that's not who you are, which is actually one of my most favorite stories that you, like an analogy that you came up with of the flip-flops and the eyes, of when we are like in the seasons that we're in, we learn things about ourselves that nobody can take away from us. They can't tell us any different because we know who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we've seen who we are.
Yeah. So will you tell them that story?
Yes.
Because it was hilarious.
Yes. I don't remember the flip-flop one.
Yeah. The flip-flop.
You have to tell me the flip-flop.
You got the flip-flop.
Okay. I have the eyeballs. I'll tell the eyeball ones. So as we were growing and developing this program, there were certain things, light bulbs, and that went on in my mind and in my heart. And I feel like what was the coolest part, or a really cool part about it, was because it was happening in my own life in that time. And it wasn't because of something I read or something I heard, but it was just happening. And there were moments that I was just struck. And I remember being out, and I was teaching one of my Kick Fit classes. And at this point in time, we had a classroom, and the classroom, you guys, was, I just have to tell this little side note really quick. So there was a closet in the gym. And I say closet because it was darn near a closet. It was a very small office that had become a closet.
Room. Yeah.
Yes, a little storage room. And I think storage room is actually giving it a lot of credit, but it was very, very small. And so we needed a place that was a little bit more intimate to have deep conversations with the ladies. And that could fit 20 people, 22, including Lou and I.
Sometimes 30.
Yeah, sometimes 30. And she says, okay, I think we need to clear out this closet and make it a classroom. And I looked at her and I was like, what? And she said, yeah, let's clear it out. And after we can put a little whiteboard at the end. And I was like, this room is literally 6 feet wide. Like, literally 6 feet wide. I don't know how long it was. It was long, skinny, but people would be sitting on one wall across from someone sitting with their back against the other. And there was maybe room for 2 people that sat shoulder to shoulder in between them. So like 4 people wide. So there were rows of women in here after they worked out. It was ripe in there. It was really ripe. It was like a jungle. It was the humidity was insane. Anyway,
again, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. And so I thought you were nuts, but it was incredible. So Lou was in this classroom, if you will, and I was out teaching a kickboxing class, and I just had this this light bulb that went on, and I ran into the office and I looked at her and I said, "What color are my eyes?" And she was like, "Oh my gosh," because sometimes I get a little crazy, guys. And she was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "What color are my eyes? Like, just answer the question. What color are my eyes?" She's like, "Blue." I was like, "Exactly." So then I closed the door and I go out. She was like,
I'm thinking, what in the world is going on?
And so I'm out there teaching and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if I had never seen myself before, if I've never experienced what it is to look at my own reflection, Lou could have told me that my eyes were brown and I would have believed her because I don't know what color they are. And so outside of people that are around us telling us who we are, we need to discover who we are, and we need to know who we are through experiencing ourselves. So me experiencing my reflection my entire life, I know that you're full of shiz when you tell me that
So then she comes back into the room. She comes back into the room.
Oh,
she
yeah, that's
opens
right.
the door and she says, "Tell me that my eyes are brown." And I'm thinking, your eyes are not brown. And she kind of looks at me, "Tell me that my eyes are brown." And I said, "Your eyes are brown." And she says, "No, they're not." And then she closes the door.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. You know, when sometimes we want to be told lies so that we're right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just don't know the difference.
Yeah.
And the only way that we're going to know the difference, even in ourselves, when other people speak, man, I tell you, we've had more deliveries that have been coming around in our parking lot today, and jets that are flying over. I don't know if
Danny said
y'all can hear it.
We're good.
Okay, great.
So Chantel leaves this other analogy where when we do know who we are, when we know why we're alive and we know that we are living, if somebody was to look at me and say, "Lou, you should not be doing this as a career. You should definitely go sell real estate because that's what you should do." I know me and I can say, no, that's this is why I'm alive. And I know that I am living fully. And there's way too many administrative things to do as a real estate agent. So I don't think I don't want to do that. But there was this one day where Chantel, she doesn't remember this story. She'll remember it when I say it. But we're in this group of ladies and she throws this flip-flop on the floor.
Yes, I remember.
And she looks at, whoever she looks at, Pamela. She says, "Pamela, tell that flip-flop that it's not a flip-flop." And Pamela's like, why would I do that? She's like, "Tell it that it is not a flip-flop." And so Pamela says, "You are not a flip-flop." And then she's like, "Did it change from not being a flip-flop?" And everybody's like, "Well, of course not." And so it's that when we know why we're alive, when we know that we are living, people can tell us whatever they want. But when we know who we are, when we know that we are significant and that we have purpose in this life and we are playing that significant and purposeful lead role, we can make a difference in the world. And it doesn't matter what people end up telling us that it is. But we have to be able to see what it is that we are really good at and realizing what we're not so good at. The air gas guy is totally about to turn his thing on. I bet. Can hear him hammering that thing. You guys, we have the people next door to us, they have this company that they do a lot of things that we don't know about, but they have these gigantic, huge tanks that hold nitric oxide.
I'm not sure what it is, but it's definitely gas that has like the flammable or the thing that says that it's flammable.
Yeah. And so this truck comes by once a week and he usually gets in a rhythm and he usually comes. Thank goodness he is here actually when we don't have a class. But normally he parks his gigantic semi truck right in front of our door. And then he turns his truck on. Generator truck. It's like exhaust city that just blows into the gym. It'll be at 8 o'clock in the morning during class. And then it's just like,
no bueno.
For like at least 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it smells like
loud.
Exhaust in here. And we're pretty sure that he just pulled up.
But so if it does get really loud or feels like it is, then we might need to
I think we'll be okay.
Pause. But
so the the important part is that we can, in the world that we live in, there is so much comparison. So much comparison. And comparison gets so dangerous when we don't realize what we're doing.
Yeah.
And when we don't know who we are, we're looking around. And it's really hard to feel safe inside of our bodies, to connect with ourselves, to know why we're alive and why we're living if oh my gosh. You guys. Chantel just, oh my gosh. We decided not to do this like round of podcasts with videos because it's just a really big production, but I really wish there was video. She just went to go like put her hair back and then she just freaking flexed her biceps, like just flex. And I'm supposed to keep a train of thought while you're just sitting there like flexing your muscles.
Face. I was hoping that it would disrupt. But...
No, it totally disrupted. So if I am constantly wanting things that other people have, and I want to be like someone else, I'm trying to impersonate somebody else. I can be inspired, right? But if all I'm ever wanting is to be like someone else, I am going to consistently be disappointed.
Yeah.
Right. I have used this analogy for a really long time, and I don't know if I've ever said it on a podcast, but if I did, I'm sorry. I'm going to repeat myself. Chantel is my roommate. And in our old house, our rooms used to be like across the hall from each other. And if every day she came out of her room and was like, hey, good morning. And every day I was like, dang, I wish that my eyes were blue and that my legs were as long as yours. Like, that's a very disappointing way to start every single day.
Yeah.
Because my legs are not going to get longer.
No.
And my eyes are not going to be blue.
Yeah.
My eyes are hazel and my legs are short.
No, I was just going to go down something that maybe it might be a little too touchy, but it really, because I was just thinking like there are doctors in places right now that will break your legs and make your legs longer.
Totally.
Which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Anyways, let's not go down there.
I was going to go with the lips and boobs and plastic surgeries and all the things. And
but here's the thing: is can we be inspired? We can be inspired, but we need to be inspired to be ourselves, not to try to be somebody else.
Yeah, that's
right?
really good.
And so impersonation and inspiration are two very different things, and you get to decide how you're going to live.
Yes.
Like that.
I went, so I taught karate for many years, and those of you that listen on the regular, you are aware of that. And I have a student, or I had a student. I had a student who asked me, it was actually so crazy because he asked me, he's like, hey, I'm in town. Do you want to go have a drink together? And I was like, you were 12 when I was teaching you. Anyway, so we went, we had a drink together, and he was talking to me, and he's this great young man, and he's quoting all of these philosophers. And I mean, like he has them written in front of him. Like he said these quotes time and time over again. Well, so-and-so says this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so-and-so says this and da-da-da. And I'm like, man, you have not given me one original thought in the 2 hours that we have been sitting here together. You have given me what you think about other people's thoughts. But even then, you're just quoting them, and that's it. That's what's starting the conversation. And it really is like he is being inspired by them, but he's just repeating what they've already said. And there is the fear of like, you actually have, like, you have something to say. It's owning that. You have something to say. What is it?
Yeah.
Your job is not to like, just repeat everything that everyone else says. It's not to be, what do you call that? Like a recorder.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. It is to be who you are. And so it's that's the part that's a little scary, because if I am fully who I am, then what does that mean? I can be accepted or not. It's the same thing in movement when we look at finding our capacity. If you truly do fail, you've given everything that you possibly can in a movement, in a sandbag carry, in a deadlift, and then you fail, what you have currently isn't enough to lift the weight, isn't enough to walk the distance.
Doesn't mean you are not enough.
Correct. It means that we have found a starting place, an honest and true starting place, to where now we can build strength from there. Now we can look at, okay, this is my capacity. But if we're quitting, if we're just repeating what other people say because it sounds better, we're not trusting ourselves. And I'm not saying that you can't repeat what other people say. I hope you don't hear me say that. But it is you have things to say too that are powerful. But what is it?
In the way that you would say it.
Mm-hmm. And because of the experiences that you have had, the risks that you have taken, the burdens that you have taken on, the fights that you have fought, the times where you have given everything you have and it wasn't enough. And then what you did after getting that answer, right? What you did after that wasn't enough. What did you do? Did you just quit? Because I can guarantee that guy that you're quoting didn't just quit.
Yeah. And he didn't just arrive at that quote on the very first thing that he ever wrote.
Exactly. And I remember when first taking the risks that I did in my life and you and I starting to work together, and lots of changes happened in my life during that time. And I remember feeling like not equipped for what we were walking into. And I am thinking, I'm not ready. I don't have the things that I need in order to carry this load. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so the safest thing for me was to look for external sources to give me direction as to where I should go. And you were the closest one to me. And we were both running in the same direction. So I would look at you as a resource for what I needed to do next. And so I was like, oh, Lou's doing this. She's inspiring people this way. I need to start doing that too. She's doing this. I need to start doing this. She's doing that. I need to start doing that. And I was just then finding, which honestly, it was very helpful because it started the ball rolling. But then once I realized, this is not me. Who am I? Because now I'm needing more information and I'm needing more of a source, and you're not giving it to me because you didn't even know that I was looking to you to begin with. Then I thought, okay, well, that's when I knew that I was no longer looking to you and get my ball rolling. I was now looking to me, and I had to now trust me.
Yeah.
And which
when you
was
talk
very
about
scary.
Ball rolling, you're thinking, okay, Lou's reading these books and then she retains this information and then she creates this like chart, when in fact you teach in story, you teach in analogy, and it would be so weird if you were teaching the way that I taught.
Yeah. And it was harder for me because
it wasn't natural.
Because it wasn't natural, but I felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was inspired by when I watched you teach and when I watched you learn and discover different things, right? And so I remember that season, and you and I, we were actually, we were away. We were invited to speak. And I remember being in the hotel room and laying in bed and thinking, holy shit. Lou is the chips and I am the salsa. Why am I trying to bring more chips to the party? Like, why, if everybody brought chips to the party, there would just be a bunch of chips? And I think I've also,
dry.
I've shared this I've shared this before, I think on another podcast, but that is where it came from, was in that moment, even looking at my own contribution to the world and how things got started. It wasn't just all of a sudden everything came into my lap. There was a lot of doubt. There was a lot of questioning my ability, my endurance, my strength, all the things that, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I could name so many things that could have kept me from taking action. Yeah. I could have named so many things. And I could still name things that I feel like keep me from taking action in my life, right? And so this, to kind of like wrap up contribution, I think that it's a scary topic. It's one that isn't something that you just, or it is, that you just dive into. But if it makes you uncomfortable listening to this, good.
Yeah.
Because it could mean that there's something inside of you that is dying to get out.
Yeah.
There's something inside of you that's like, hey, listen, psst, psst, this is what I've been tickling you about for a long time. And this is what this looks like. And so hopefully,
but it's not going to feel easy. It's not going to feel simple. It's not going to feel, you guys, it is, oh my gosh. It is
maybe we should wrap up this.
Let's wrap up this episode, because there is a hissing and a rumbling outside that is awful. And it's going to go for probably the next 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's too long.
Because that is really loud.
Man, I tell you what, Lou,
we're a good hour and 42 minutes into this episode, so maybe we'll just make it a two-parter.
Yeah, I am jacked after talking to you about all this. It really does just... it tickles you. And so like, just to conclude that, if this is something where, if you already decided as you're listening to this in looking at contribution, you're like, this doesn't apply to me. Well, does it not? Yeah. Like, you are human, you are alive, and just ask yourself the questions, even, like, do you believe that you are significant?
Yeah.
Do you believe that you have a purpose in this world? But if we are wanting other people's callings, if we are wanting other people's, quote, purpose, and wishing that we had what they have, and because you don't have what they have, then you're just deciding not to find out why you're actually here, that is being a brat, actually. If you think about it, I don't get what I want, and it doesn't look like the way that I want it to look, and so therefore I'm going to abandon my purpose here on this earth. Like, man, like, that means I get to miss out. Like, I am missing out. Like, you are alive for the benefit of other people. Like, I benefit from you, Lou, being as passionate as you are about life and about caring for people and wanting to know and connect the dots and to find reason with things. I get to benefit from that, not because you're training me, but because I get to see how that affects other people. I get to benefit from that, and they get to benefit from that as well. And it's like that with all of the things. I feel like all the different callings that people have, like, we get to benefit from other people's lives.
Yeah.
But yes, we often feel like we get the benefit from other people's lives, but nobody's going to get the. Are we beneficial?
Benefiting other people.
Yeah, I'm like, that doesn't. Yeah.
But I want to end with this, and I know that I've said this a lot, and it goes just exactly off of what you were saying. Is so often we live in a culture where there's a lot of people just being really loud and like, you should do this, and people should be doing this, and the government should be doing this, and the president should be doing this, and the governor should be doing this, and people should be doing this, and they're just yelling. And you have to stop, and you're like, so what are you doing? Like, you don't like what's happening in the world, and instead of yelling that other people should go and do that, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? You want what other people are doing, but are you willing to go through what those people actually have gone through? Do you want what it is that they've walked through. Do you want that part of that story? Mm-hmm. Or do you just want the end part of it? But you may not want all that's in the middle. Mm-hmm. Like everybody thinks, gosh, it'd be so cool to own a gym. And then you start a gym and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things about this that are definitely not sexy. Mm-hmm. Right? But we look at certain things and we want people to do certain things and we want other people to do stuff. Mm-hmm. But then we have to stop and look at ourselves and realize and ask ourselves the question, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. So if you want this change in the world, looking at the things that you're passionate about, what sets your heart on fire? What are you really good at? What makes you come alive? What makes you burn? Is it foster care? Is it adoption? Maybe it's animals. Maybe it's the elderly. Mm-hmm. Maybe like there's so many different things that light us all up. Mm-hmm. Right? And we get to decide what we're going to do with that. We get to decide how we're going to be inspired to change the world instead of just sitting back in our freaking chairs and yelling at everybody else or criticizing everybody else on social media.
Yeah.
Like if that's what you're doing, like get off your ass and go do something. Like go do something with purpose. Because you being critical of everyone else is doing nothing.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's that quote, that Theodore Roosevelt quote of like being in the arena and you're getting bloody. And if you're not, then shut up.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Like if you're not willing to get in there and get your hands dirty and like sweat and get beat up and bruised because you're like in the arena, you need to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. You know, Eve, I was driving yesterday, and I know that you're looking something up.
I'm looking for the quote.
I'm just gonna float on this for just a second. But also, I think what was important when you and I first started working together, we knew that the people had to come first, and then the money would come after that. And we've been very blessed to have a lot of things show up in our life financially that would just blow your mind. And but in this situation, sometimes you feel like, okay, well, contribution just means that I'm going to just make money. Yeah, like that's great. But if your focus is always and always will be just on the money, the people will get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like the people will get in the way. And so yeah, so just kind of sit on that a little bit. Yeah. Where am I just doing this just to make money?
Yeah.
And so sometimes that is something that might be temporary, which is okay, because we do need money, folks, and we're not saying that you don't and you should just live in this like poverty mindset or just be self-sacrificial. But no, it's okay to want to make money. Yes, it is.
And need to, because that's how the doors stay open.
Yes.
Yeah. So the quote, most of you have heard this, but the man in the arena, and it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. Okay? Where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in worthy causes. Are you spending yourself in worthy causes? That's not in the quote. I just said that. So who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Ugh.
Mr. Theodore Roosevelt.
So powerful.
Are you one of those souls who neither knows victory nor defeat? And I think maybe we just leave it there.
Put a bow on that.
To be continued.
Yes, Lou, it was a pleasure as always sitting across from you. I just never get bored of you as a human, as a leader, I just sit across from you. Yeah, and as a friend.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
yeah.
Thank you for listening. Please share, subscribe, all those things that you're like supposed to say at the end of a podcast so that people like do stuff. You can find me on Instagram at Lou Crenshaw. You can find Chantel at chantel.dayton. You can find us on Instagram at Drop Gym Effect, or even Drop Gym Medford at our local community. Our Drop Gym Effect is more of our global community.
You can check out our website that also has a list of the events that we have left for 2023. And then
dropgym.com is the website.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you or talk to you or have you listen to
You'll hear us
later.
You'll hear words from us later.
And you can like find us on Spotify and Apple.
Yes, you can.
And yeah, we're so professional.
Thank you. Come again.
All right, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Great day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.